D'accord, ok. D'accord, bien sûr, bien sûr. Oui, je suis très bien. Je vais rentrer dans un réunion maintenant. Allez, merci. Merci. Je suis là. Allez.
Good evening, hello, and welcome to the 2019 Regional Annual Sports Awards, coming to you live from Namibia, live in the capital city, Windhoek, and we are at Safari Court. And tonight it's all about celebrating the sportsmen and women of the Southern African continent, and we're talking about the Glitterati that is going to be happening here. We're celebrating all sports codes. We're talking about athletics, rugby to football, netball to chess, and so much more. Now, of course, already been here, we have seen so many athletes, and one category to look out for is, of course, Journalist of the Year. We have Mopetami, who's nominated, Lauren, who's also nominated in Junior Sports Woman of the Year. Definitely a category that you must be looking out for. I'm super, super excited, and of course, we'll be talking to those that are nominated in the categories to find out how they're feeling about the night, and of course, what Rasa means to them. So make sure that you catch us as we speak to them. With me now, it is the LLC chair, Mr. Ervin Javera. Good evening, lovely to have you here. And I should say you look dapper, you clean up very well.
Thank you so much. It's a stunning event. We need to look like stunning people.
All right, you need to represent. Now, let's talk about the RASA quickly, 2019. Can you tell us how important are the regional annual sports awards to athletes in the southern region?
Well, that's what athletes are working for their whole lifetime. They sweat, they run, they practice, they put efforts in. It's a dream come true. So awarding them becomes like the icing on the cake. And say, no, you are well rewarded. This is your achievement. It's an honor for them to get that achievement. It's a prestige for them to get this achievement. So this is the ultimate thing that all athletes are going through, and then we as officials within the sport administration need to make sure that we really recognize our athletes and award them accordingly.
It's actually a milestone for Namibia to host the RASA. I mean, I'm the executive director for the Ministry of Sport, Youth and National Service. So we've put a lot of hard work, and we're excited to see that finally we are able to pull it off. And I'm excited and wishing all the nominees all the best, and let the best sportsman or woman win.
People are coming in numbers all the way from Lesotho, South Africa, and of course another lovely lady, beautiful looking, lovely. She's nominated, joining me here. Sportswoman of the Year, that's the category you nominated, and congratulations. How are you feeling about it?
Oh, thank you. I'm honored and I'm happy. You know, it's not easy being there. Just a nomination is a very big thing.
Absolutely.
So being a finalist is an achievement. So I'm happy.
So what? Joining me as well is Laura McLeod, looking absolutely dashing in the outfit. You look lovely and beautiful. Good evening.
Good evening.
Tell us about Rasa. What does Rasa mean, especially also Namibia Windhoek hosting them for the first time?
Oh, yes. RASA is the awards for the sports winners of this country. And I think as a host region, we are very proud. We have accepted the event to be done in Windhoek, and we are happy about it. And I think they did not make a mistake by choosing Windhoek as the place and the venue.
Absolutely. Now, of course, we know that Windhoek, being the very first after South Africa to host it in Southern Africa, could only mean so much. But what do you think this means to the athletes, and especially the Namibians that were also nominated in certain categories?
It's as much as I do not know who the nominees are, but generally and in principle, I want to believe and think that this is the right thing to do. We have to honor our sportsmen and women. They need our effort and they need our recognition as to what they have done and where they put this country onto the map of the world.
Well, thank you very much.
Our heroes. They are our heroes.
Of course, yes, we celebrate our heroes. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you.
All right, there you go, Namibia. And of course, remember, we are coming to you live from Namibia's capital, Windhoek, and we're talking about the Regional Annual Sports Awards. Junior Sportswomen of the Year nominated. It's Lauren Wright, and you look beautiful.
Thank you.
How are you? Okay, besides the fact that you're nervous, and you just shared that with me, what does Rasa mean to you?
It's just extremely amazing to just be seen, kind of thing, and just all my hard work being noticed. It's really, really amazing, and it's really nice to have the support from Rasa as well. So yeah.
Lauren, we're wishing you all the best of luck. We keep our fingers crossed, and hopefully that you're going to scoop that award tonight.
Hopefully. Thank you.
That is Lauren, nominated in the category of Junior Sportswoman of the Year. And she's extremely nervous. But you know what? We're wishing her the best of luck. That's all she needs. And remember, if you are nominated, that could only mean you are already a winner.
I'm Dr. Mahadi Pamutz. I'm the Minister of Gender and Youth, Sports and Recreation of the Kingdom of Lesotho.
I see a lot of Lesotho ladies made sure that they're out in numbers. How is sports, especially amongst ladies in Lesotho?
We are not yet there, but we are trying to introduce women to sports.
A very good morning to you, all our distinguished dignitaries and guests, partners, and all participants following us on our Facebook page and Zoom platforms. Welcome to the Africa Union Sports Council Region 5, the leading home of excellence, of innovation and excellence, My name is Muipuni Mashali. I will be the Director of Proceedings today. Let me make few announcements and ask that participants can choose language options of their choice, as we are offering this webinar in our official language of Region 5, which is English and Portuguese. Another announcement is that we kindly request all participants to mute their mics while presentations are going on. And Also, we will request all the panelists to switch on their videos when their time comes. May I take the pleasure to remind you all, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, that on the 8th of March, 2021, the world commemorated the International Women's Day, and the United Nations announced the theme for the International Women's Day as Women in Leadership, Achieving an Equal Future in a COVID-19 World. The theme celebrates the tremendous efforts by women and girls around the world in shaping a more equal future and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. As Region 5 joined the rest of the world in commemorating the International Women's Day by hosting a webinar which focused on the region's women's leaders and women's organizations that have demonstrated their resilience, skills, knowledge, and networks to effectively lead in COVID-19 response and recovery efforts in the sport fraternity. Further to this, the region declared the month of March as Women's Month and is hosting a two-part webinar series as its extension to International Women's Day commemoration. Today's webinar is the first of the two-part series dubbed The Game Changer, which will be running under the theme, Coping with COVID-19, Breaking Barriers for Women in Sport. Before we commence proceedings, allow me to invite you to please join us in singing the African Union Anthem.
Celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. All sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa a tree of life. Let us all unite and sing together to uphold the bonds that frame our destiny. Let us dedicate ourselves to fight together for lasting peace and justice on earth. Oh, sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa the tree of life. Let us all unite and join together to give the best we have to Africa, the cradle of mankind, the fount of culture, our pride and hope at break of dawn. Oh, sons and
That anthem, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, stirs us in that spirit of patriotism and pride in being African. Let me take this opportunity to recognize our guests this morning before I invite the Council of Ministers Vice Chairperson and Minister of Labour, Youth, Sports and Manpower Development, Honorable Ulemi Msongama, MP in Malawi, to welcome and introduce our distinguished dignitaries. This morning, we recognize the presence of permanent secretaries from Region 5 member countries here present, Chairperson of the African Union Sports Council Region 5 Executive Committee, Mr. Moretsi Bukhosi, your Secretariat and members of your Executive Committee. Region 5 Secretary General, Chief Executive Officer, Mr. Stanley Motoya and your staff. African Union Sports Council Coordinator, Dr. Dishias Chipande. Anoka Zone 6 President and Secretary General, RADO President and General Manager, Region 5 partners, in particular Norwegian Olympic and Paralympic Committee and Confederations of Sports, NIF, and the Association for International Sport for All, TAFISA. The President, Women's Sport International, Ms. Diane Huffman, AWISA Secretary General, Ms. Carol Guerros, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, participants following us on our Facebook and Zoom platforms. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I will now invite the Vice Chairperson of the AUSC Region 5 Council of Ministers, who's also a Minister of Labor, Youth, Sports and Manpower Development in Malawi. Honorable Ulemi Msongama, MP, please welcome and introduce our dignitaries.
Thank you very much. I'm sure you can hear me there.
You, Honorable Minister.
Yeah, thank you very much. First of all, good morning. I wanted to say now with the new administration, my ministry now is no longer labor and manpower and what have you. It's now Minister of Youth and Sports. So I thought of making that correction. It's Minister of Youth and Sports, just youth and sports. So a very good morning to you all, our distinguished dignitaries, guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the African Union Sports Council Region 5, a leading home of innovation and excellency. It is my absolute pleasure on behalf of the Region 5 Council of Ministers to warmly welcome all of you to this webinar dubbed the Game Changer. This is the first of the two-part series that we organize as part of our celebration of women and girls in the region. We consciously decided to dedicate the month of March to celebrating as an extension of our commemoration of the International Women's Day, being marked under the theme Women in Leadership, Achieving an Eco Future COVID-19 world. We as Region 5 are most humbled to have all of you joining us via digital platforms as we join the rest of the world in adding our voice on the need to celebrate women in all sectors of society and national agendas. Today, we are most humbled to recognize distinguished ladies, women, and influence and high-level intellect, astute leaders and gallant cuddlers for social change who will be leading in panel discussions under the theme Coping with COVID-19, Breaking Barriers for Women in Sport. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me the honor to introduce to you accomplished women leaders who themselves are proponents of social transformation and have broken barriers, walls, and ceiling. They have shattered off restrictions and limitations and have proven beyond reasonable doubt that women deserve respect and recognition. Allow me to introduce and recognize the presence of the chairperson of the African Union Sports Council, Region 5 Council of Ministers, and also Lesotho Minister of Gender, Youth, Sports, and Recreation, Honorable Likeleli Tampane. We are most honored to have you in our midst. We also welcome Angola Minister of Youth and Sports, Honorable Ana Paula de Sacramento Neto. Thank you for favoring us with your presence out of your busy schedules. One of the iconic daughter of the soil who has blazed the trail, earning herself the title Queen of the Waters, is Zimbabwe Minister of Sport, Art and Recreation, Honorable Dr. Kitse Covington. She took the Commonwealth and Olympic Games as well as FINA World Championship by storm, breaking several world records on the way to amassing 7 Olympic Games medal between 2004 and 2008, and 22 African Games medals between 2007 and 2015. You are welcome, Dr. Coventry. From the land of the brave, I warmly welcome Namibia Deputy Minister of Sport, Youth and National Service, Honorable Emma Kantema Gomes. She is a fiberbrand female leader who has led the youth by example and has a passion for advancement of Africa's aspirations as espoused in the blueprint, Agenda 2063. Welcome, Honorable Deputy Minister. All the way from Addis Ababa, Africa's capital city, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to warmly and heartily welcome the African Union Commission, Director of Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, Mrs. Mariam Sis Mahomet. We are humbled that you have honored our invitation. It's a loud testament of the value that the African Union places on its sports development regions. Welcome to Region 5, Madam Director. From our very own regional economy community, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome the Southern Africa Development Community Executive Secretary, Dr. Sigomena Lawrence Tax. We are aware that SADC places the plight of women at the heart of its mandate. We gladly welcome your patronage, Dr. Tusk, with the full understanding that as espoused in the SADC protocol on culture, information, and sport, Region 5, then known as Supreme Council for Sport Zone 6, is recognized as the arm of SADC responsible for sports development in the region. We thank our forefathers for their foresight. Welcome, Dr. Tax. Through your esteemed participation in Region 5 activities, we know sport will find a place on the agenda of the SADC Head of States Summit. As the world grapples in the wake of the devastating COVID-19 pandemic, all eyes and hope remain glued to the World Health Organization for scientific respite. We are honored today in welcome WHO Botswana Country Representative Dr. Josephine Namboze. We warmly welcome you to the Region 5, the leading home of innovation and excellency. Allow me, therefore, to wish all of us a very fruitful and productive webinar. Let us join forces in intensifying efforts towards elevation of women and girls. Once again, welcome to Region 5, the leading home of innovation and excellence. I thank you and have a very blessed and fruitful discussion. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And let us just take note of the correction to the ministry, which is now Ministry of Sports and Youth. We really apologize for that. We are delighted to have such a high-powered team of distinguished women leaders in our midst. Right now, we will take a short breather to watch a short informative video of AUSC Region 5 programs as we wait to delve straight into the business of the day.
Set.
Thank you, technicians, for the video. We are delighted to see such a rich basket of programs for women in Region 5. Indeed, as Region 5, we don't follow standards. We set the pace for others to follow. Moving on with the program, let us get straight to the business that has brought us here today. To all those joining us on our various digital platforms, you're most welcome. Today, we have a rich lineup of powerful women leaders to share with us during this series. We shall have 7 panelists, each sharing their insight for 7 minutes, on a segment of the discussion. Thereafter, we will field questions from you, our valued participants and guests. So please feel free to text your contributions through the chat box on both the Zoom and the Facebook Live platforms. We will read these comments and questions to the panelists during the plenary session. As earlier mentioned, the topic for today's panel discussion is coping with COVID-19, breaking barriers for women in sport. Our distinguished panelists will unpack how women have and should break barriers in coping with COVID-19 in different sub-areas. Our first panelist today will be leading a discussion on the topic, the role of women in the African sports policy for sustainable development. To help us unpack this topic, please help me welcome our first panelist, who is Ms. Mariam Mahomet, Director of African Union Commission. She worked at the European Union delegation in Niger for more than 4 years as legal counsel before joining the African Union Commission in 2007, where she served as the executive secretary of the African Committee of Experts on the Rights and Welfare of the Child from 2007 to 2018, and as director for Social Affairs Department from 2018 to date. In September 2003, she was awarded the International Human Rights Prize from the Federation of Judges, Prosecutors, and Lawyers in Germany. Welcome, Ms. Mahomet.
Thank you, moderator. Honorable ministers, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to be part of this webinar on coping with COVID-19, breaking barrier for women in sport. On behalf of Her Excellency Amira El Fadil, Commissioner for Social Affairs, I wish to express my gratitude to AUSC Region 5 and congratulate you, Honorable Minister Tapane, Chairperson of the Council of Ministers for AUSC Region 5, for having such a successful and vibrant region. As we are all aware, sport is an important part of culture that has potential to improve the social and cultural lives of the African people, particularly women, by bringing together different communities and countries to build strong cultural identity and share value. In an effort to achieve this goal, the African Union Commission developed generic sport policy framework and program that speaks to, amongst other things, gender equality and empowerment that should be implemented by all sport development region, member state, and other sport development partners. At the African Union, we have made gender equality and empowerment of women our priority. This is seen in the principle of gender equality enshrined in Article 4 of the Constitutive Act of the African Union and in the aspiration of the Africa we want enshrined in the Agenda 2063, emphasizing an African resource development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially women and youth, and caring for children. In an effort to achieve this goal, the revised draft policy framework for sustainable development priority gender equality and inclusion of women and girls in all areas of sport. It's put emphasis on female athletes by creating a safe sporting environment, safe from abuse, and female sport leader by creating opportunity for female to be coaches, technical officials, and sport administrator at all sport levels. There is no doubt that participation of girls and women in sport is hindered by a number of factors such as social cultural norms, access to sport facility, and above all, safe sporting environments. The draft sport policy for sustainable development has three important pillars: Active Africa, Sustainable Africa, and Winning Africa, that are aimed at creating a conducive environment for girl and woman participation in sport and physical activities. The pillar 1, which is Active Africa, put emphasis on enhancing inclusive quality physical education and sport for all in school, particularly for girls and children with disability that have been excluded for a long time. We have also promoting and supporting participation in physical activity and healthy lifestyle for all girls and women in communities. For the pillar 2, Sustainable Africa, we have good governance in sport, but ensure inclusion of women in sport leadership as coaches, technical official, and administrator, creating a safe sport environment for women, girls, and all children by protecting them from abuse and creating a gender equality sport environment. For the pillar number 3, Winning Africa, we have the development of long-term localized sport education program to increase the number of female coaches administrated and the role model for young girls and women. We have also long-term localized athlete development framework for all the prioritized girl and women participation in community and high performance sports. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the African Union Commission through Sport Office will continue to engage and support the implementation of the sport policy for sustainable development, particularly on gender equality, to ensure that no woman or girl is left behind. I thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, what an insightful presentation. Thank you most heartedly, Director. We have taken few notes from your presentation, and of utmost importance is that gender equality and empowerment of women is of top priority for Africa Union. We heard that there are policies that have been developed in order to accomplish that. Thank you so much. The next panelist will be dealing with the topic, how should women improve advocacy for formulation, review, and implementation of policies that safeguard them from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and natural disasters. To lead the discussion on this topic, please welcome our next panelist, who is Honorable Dikeledi Dambani. She is the Region 5 Council of Ministers Chairperson and also the Minister of Gender, Youth, Sports and Recreation of Lesotho. Honorable Dambani was elected in Parliament since 2012 to date. And she has also been a Minister of Tourism, Environment and Culture of Lesotho. She was also elected to the Democratic Congress Party's Women League. Welcome, Honorable Dikeledi Dambani.
Thank you so much, moderator. Master of Ceremony, I wish to pay my respect to AUSC Region 5, Council of Ministers, Vice Chairperson, Honorable Olema Muzungama, honorable members of the Council of Ministers, and fellow panelists today, African Union Commission Director Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, Madam Sisi, SADC Executive Secretary, Dr. Tex, World Health Organization, Botswana, Country Representative, Dr. Namunze, distinguished guests and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, allow me to say all protocol observed. Firstly, allow me to thank the AUSC Region 5 Secretariat for spearheading and facilitating this very significant panel, discussing and declaring the month of March to be Women's Month as part of celebrating the 2021 International Women's Day, I wish to congratulate and salute the movement that places significant importance of women and our role in the broader societal, political, economic, and governmental functions. Ladies and gentlemen, the world has been hit by the deadliest pandemic in our history and has created the new standards in which communities all over the world have to adapt if they are to continue existing. The number of infections has risen to over 118 million globally and has claimed over 2.5 million lives worldwide so far. The impact is felt by all in almost our spheres of life. In the United Nations Secretary General's report of 2020 on progress towards sustainable development goals, it was clearly outlined that income equality was falling before COVID-19 in some countries. The most affected group in society was women, who are counted amongst the most vulnerable and hardest hit by the COVID-19 virus. This is along with older people, people with disability, and children. Almost all countries were forced into almost all countries were forced into some serious mitigation measures which halted world economies, hostage, thus leaving struggling economies shattered. Be it as it may, the virus continues to spread and mutate, thus becoming more resistant, and dangerous patterns and cultures have been affected negatively, forcing the world into a new way of living and conducting business, such as through online meetings, which reduces social distancing, wearing masking at all times, and regular sanitizing. Ladies and gentlemen, with now COVID-19 in our lives, causing havoc and forcing everybody to their backyards, women and girls to be in the center of all ordeals significant to the pandemic. High level of acceptances of intimate partner violence amongst both men and women indicate inadequate understanding of human rights and has resulted in a culture of silence, stigma, and fear leading to under-reporting of domestic violence cases. The experts have revealed that we will continue to feel the repercussions of this COVID-19. There's a need for a comprehensive model which will instill pillars to safeguard our women and girls should we have reappearance or another disaster. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, COVID-19 implications have been adverse to our nations and to our societies. Lockdowns have increased the risk of violence against women and girls. This included physically, sexually, and psychological violence. The United Nations reported that cases of domestic violence increased in some countries, and that figure is alarming. We can all attest to the fact that there was an upward surge in cases of domestic violence and gender-based violence in our own communities. Changing norms, attitudes, and practices that cause and perpetuate and condone domestic violence must become the pinnacle of our interventions. Women individually and in groups need to devise a strategy that would ensure that policies are being transformed to cater and clearly address issues of women marginalization in our communities. To do this, it would be strategic to employ the following in order to ensure a buy-in and support across several influential sectors. One, raise awareness on and addresses the underlying causes of women abuse in all its forms, including women trafficking. Two, build a strength and strengthen the capacity of services providers on advocacy and activism against gender-based violence. Include training on case management and standardized procedures. Three, mobilize technical and financial resources for implementation of integrated approaches to combine gender-based violence from governmental and non-governmental sectors. The fourth one, strengthen multi-stakeholder coordination and collaboration for the prevention of and response for gender-based violence. Ladies and gentlemen, women today aspire and advocate for real action and a practical mindset shift, as well as respect as equal, competent, qualified, and capable human beings. There is a desire for equal opportunities and access to means of production. The need for a global local advocacy can never be overemphasized. This ensures global coordination and agenda setting through benchmarking and trend analysis. We commend the AUSC Region 5 Secretariat for inviting such bodies as the Women's Sport International, TAVISA and AWISA, to this panel discussion. That becomes to a starting point and basis for a global local advocacy strategy. Women in sport need to other groups such as business women, women in politics, and women to mention fields in order to unite against the COVID pandemic. In COVID-19 relief and recovery grants, as they have been the highest hit. Women are on the front lines of fighting COVID-19. Women account for 70% and social workers. Women, the additional households, the pandemic. Research has relieved women not deserve to be saluted. Ladies and gentlemen, let me share with you the Lesotho's experience. In Lesotho, we have made some legislative framework to address the discrimination of women and girls. As a nation, we have successfully developed the policy 2018-2018. The policy is aligned to the international instruments such as Gender and Development, CEDAW, and the National Strategic Plan and SDP2, amongst others. First step of policy. We have tabled the domestic 521 to the Parliament. There is a national sports and recreation policy draft that is awaiting it. Within the policy, the section that involves gender equality and women's empowerment, which are considered critical questions for the effective and sustainable development of sport and recreation, and a key drive hence social and political development. This recognizes that women and girls have in administration and leadership in sport, recreation, cultural and structural exist that limit the full participation of in sport in Lesotho. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me state administration and structural women in sport in Lesotho. The need for advocacy should go beyond information. It must permeate the actual gender harmony advocacy melody in the broader gender transformation orchestra. At this stage, allow me to state the 2013 Bonn Conference position that we will not be mainstream to advocate to be equal partners in decision-making, prioritization, and allocation in all facets of life. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, I wish to thank the AUSC Region 5 Secretariat for organizing this webinar. Indeed, we are the leading home of innovation and excellence. I thank you all.
Women individually and in groups must take action to ensure women individually and in groups must take action to ensure strategies are in place to improve policies that safeguards them. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your presentation. We know that the audience will be ready to seek further engagement with you on this topic during the plenary session. We would like to apologize for the interruptions that occurred during Honorable Minister Tampane's presentations, and we kindly request our participants to mute their mics while this presentation is going on. As we have said earlier, The region declared the month of March as Women's Month and is hosting a two-part webinar series as its extension of International Women's Day commemoration. Kindly be reminded that the second and the final webinar will be on the 22nd March 2021 with the topic, The Future is in Women's Hands, Practical Solutions. Be sure not to miss what promises to be an exciting 2 hours of engagement. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our next panelist will be presenting the topic, Lobbying Governments for an Appropriate Legislative Framework to Deal with Perpetrators of Rights Violations Against Women and Girls in Sports. To take us through this discussion is Honorable Ana Paula da Silva do Sacramento Neto, who is a former athlete of, To take us into this discussion is Honorable Emma Katema Gaumas, who is the Deputy Minister of Sports, Youth and National Service, and also a public executive with over 15 years experience in the public and corporate sectors, where she has held numerous leadership positions. Prior to being the Deputy Minister of Sports, Youth and National Service, On Katemba Gaumas served as the Executive Director in the same ministry. Welcome, Honorable.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I hope I'm audible. Can I proceed?
You are audible, Honorable Minister.
Okay. Thank you very much for arranging these discussions, and I would like to join the previous speakers who also congratulated you on this platform. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of our Vice Chairperson for the Region 5, the esteemed panelists. I see you have set up a very powerful panel, and also I would like to acknowledge the presence of our participants who are following from all corners. I have a very short presentation that I would like to share as we unpack the theme of breaking the barriers for women in sport, but particular to the topic that I was assigned to in terms of lobbying or government legislative framework to ensure that we do cater for these vulnerable members of our society. So I would like to share a Namibian perspective by taking you through a presentation. It's going to be a short one, cognizant of the 5 minutes that I was given. Okay, very short and very brief. I'll introduce the topic, and then I would like to share a perspective on the legislative framework, more specifically as pertaining to our country, and then I'll take you through some of the initiatives that we've embarked upon to ensure that we do protect the rights of especially women and the girl child and children in particular. And then I'll round off my presentation with some few recommendations and proposed interventions as to how we can lobby government legislative framework so that we are able to deal and to break barriers for women to excel in sport. Africa is the youngest continent, as we are all aware by now, that with 65% of its population being under the age of 35 years, I just want to stress the magnitude of the problem or the magnitude of the challenge that we are discussing here today. So this is how it affects mostly around 65% of the population in terms of continent-wide. And I know even in terms of Namibia, the youth are still the majority. It composed of around over 60% children and youth. And this is again just to sketch that magnitude. The studies have shown that among girls, especially from the age of 15 to 19 years, 31.5%, this is a Namibian case, they experience physical violence from the age of 15. Now, from this, at least 1 out of every child, especially from the age 10 to 14, experience one more form of sexual abuse. And as I was preparing for this presentation, I was quite pleased to see that one of the values that the African Union Sports Council Region 5 have put ourselves to observe, especially during as we implement the strategic plan for 2018 to 2028, is that we also strive to aim for a free discrimination and harassment in sporting environment. So this is really something that speaks to the challenge that we are faced with. And as Region 5 members, I'm urging that we all observe this value as we implement our programs and as we administer sports in the region in totality. And we know that, and we've been preaching that sport can unite nations, sport can fight evils that we are faced with in the society, the issues of alcohol abuse, drug abuse. But again, we do know that sport is a breeding ground for some of these exploitations like sexual abuse and violence. So hence the importance of elevating discussions of this magnitude at a political level. And I'm glad to see that you've composed quite a number of panelists who are able to at least elevate this challenge that we are faced with and ensure that it gets the attention that it deserves. Now, in a Namibian perspective, we fight the abuse of violence against women and girls in sport by implementing the legislation that we have at our disposal. Firstly is the Constitution, and the Article 3, Chapter 3 of our Constitution have Bill of Rights that then again hinges on the rights that we are referring to in terms of violence against women and girls, and also Article 95 that promotes the welfare of the Namibians. And at a continental level, we have our African Union, especially the Agenda 2063. The first speaker alluded to the aspiration that is very close to my heart, perhaps because of the constituency that we serve. That is the aspiration number 6. That speaks really to the people-driven and mostly the women and youth. And also we know that the AU Constitutive Act also provides for that technical team that then was entrusted to oversee the committee charged with the sports, culture, and so on. The African Union, the African Youth Charter also talks about promoting the welfare of the youth. And then again, we also have our own SDGs. And I know that the goal number 5 speaks to gender equality. And this is one instrument that assists us to then ensure that we do curb all these disparities that exist. And so one of the framework that I want to touch on is our Vision 2030. This is the long-term vision that articulates where we want Namibia to be, and gender equality, promoting of human rights is also enshrined as one of those deliverables that we need to work on. And coming at the medium-term level, we have the National Development Plan. And with this plan, we have identified sports as one of the contributors to fight youth unemployment. And it's then again cascaded at the ministerial level, where we have the ministry that's charged with the promotion and development of sport. the ministry that we are then entrusted to deliver on that mandate. And also, again, when it comes to SADC level, we have those instruments that assist us to fight the fight that we are all faced with. Okay. My next slide will just take you through some of the initiatives that we've embarked upon. We do know that the girl child, more specifically, and also when we speak about girl child, I don't want us to lose sight of a boy child, because we have seen that most programs are get towards the girl child, and now there's that discussion that because of the boy child being left out, there are now also some incidences occurring, and we do know that, especially when we talk about the child abuse, the boy child is also included. I put deliberately that picture there because in the middle there here is our First Lady for the Republic of Namibia, as she is running a program called Be Free, that is a non-judgmental platform where we encourage youth to speak out, especially to break free from violence. So we had an initiative where we called it Be Free Bowling. So that sector, that session only then targeted the children in the sports sector. So these are some of the initiatives that we are embarking upon. And you could see that it was yielding results, because some of the girls that we engaged there, you could see they were now opening up, starting to identify that, look, the way how my coach relates to me, it's actually tantamount to abuse, being it emotional or physical. There has been even issues of rape in terms of the sports coaches. Remember, with the coaches, they have that role that they play, that it's more a trust issue. So at times it's abused. And I've just highlighted some of the few policy directives that we are implementing. The first one there, we have a ministry that's charged with the responsibility to look after gender equality and child welfare, and they've developed case management protocols for child protection with a strong focus to recognize when is this a violence and to ensure that it's reported. I'm putting it there because I want us as policy makers to start ensuring that sport as a sector is not left out in the bigger scope of various legislations that we do have. In Namibia, our justice sector has developed a child witness manual that was in 2017, and there's been training conducted to ensure that at least the children are protected in terms of witnessing and going to court and all that. And when it comes to the education sector, there was a training manual that was also developed to respond to sexual violence in schools. I'm putting this up because we do have school sport. And school sports, especially in Namibia, and I know also the case of South Africa, it's administered by the department responsible for education. So we still have to cater for it, especially in that sector for school sport. Now, in terms of our ministry, last year we initiated the drafting of a child safeguarding policy, and thanks to UNICEF, we've come on board to help us to develop this policy. Now, coupled with this policy is we are also intending to produce a training manual and also to provide training, including trainers, TOT, to ensure that our sports coaches, instructors, administrators are trained to know when to identify when it's in sexual abuse or any form of violence, to detect it and also to report. So raising awareness is very key, and it's going to come out as some of my recommendations that I put in the last slide. Now we have 3 acts in Namibia that I've identified is very key to protecting the rights of the children, and that's the Child Care and Protection Act of 2015. And within this act, 2 key issues that I wanted to highlight is it provides for obtaining clearance, police clearance for caregivers and people working with children. Now, in terms of the sports sector, I'm not so sure that we have been implementing this, but it's one of those that would like to make mandatory. And again, that act provides for mandatory reporting of incidences of violence. Now, on this point, I've put it on because in terms of our act particularly, mandatory reporting refers also to, for example, if a parent is dropping a child at a netball practice and you are witnessing and you can see this form of violence being conducted by either the sports, the coach or the administrator. So you are mandated to report. If you do not report and speak up, you will be fined with a 20,000 rand, which is equivalent to a 20,000 Namibian dollars. So these are some of the initiatives that really we can lobby as government to ensure that in the sports sector, it's also, you know, entrenched, because it will then help us really to fight and to protect the rights of
I don't know when the leave was going to 2-3 days. It's done.
Combating of Rape Act is also one that provides for sexual offenders register. This then answers the question as to how can we lobby for the perpetrators of this rights violation against women and girls to be dealt with. And I think this sexual offenders register will then at least cater for that, because it then opens up to see who has committed this violence. And even when it comes to recruiting of coaches or administrators or people who are dealing with children in sports sector, they can then be dealt with under that. And again, the Combating of Domestic Violence Act. I'm just gonna skip this slide because it speaks to the existing international guidance that we all know that is out there, that was adopted by the International Olympic Committee and serves as a toolkit then for harassment of athletes. And we are also going to then see how do we domesticate these 7 principles or standards to safeguard our young ones. Especially the first point is to develop the policy, and that's the way where we are going. And also to look at how do we then put up the procedures for responding, safeguarding concerns, and up to minimizing the risks and working with various partners. Lastly, I just want to conclude by giving a few recommendations. I've highlighted 4 there. Capacity development, I've alluded to the issue of training, and this is more specifically really to train those who are especially in direct contact with athletes, so that they're able to be aware as to what constitutes violence, how do we detect it, and where do we report. And also putting women in leadership position. And I think the Region 5 is doing well in that score. I mean, you've seen the panel members that you've pulled in, all these are women in leadership position. And as Namibia, I think we are really leading also in that score, where of late 2 weeks back, we appointed a boxing chairperson as a lady. So that's really some of the deliberate initiatives that we are putting in place to also advance the girl child, to also promote women so that they can take these positions on. And the issue of policies is for us to ensure that we mainstream women and girl rights in all various policies and also acts. I'm mentioning this because we are in the process of revising our Sports Act of 2003. And in that revision, we have really identified the issue, the topic that we're discussing today, to see how do we tighten all the loopholes. So these are some of the ways how, as policymakers, we can then ensure that these rights are elevated into legislation frameworks. And also the child protection policy that we are embarking upon. These are some of the policies that really fight the violence against women and girls in sport. And very key is the code of ethics for coaches and managers because then at least this covers the issues of how they should behave, how should they conduct themselves. Rights awareness initiatives is also one recommendation, because we do know that sports, especially coaches, administrators, and mentors are volunteers. So it might be that they are not really aware, they are not trained on how to identify violence against women and girls, and creating this awareness will also just raise that we are aware, and at least to create that environment that's conducive and free of any forms of abuse. Clearance of sports coaches and instructors, I mentioned that. This is really one aspect that we are looking at enforcing. It is already in the Child Protection Act, and we want to now really ensure that in sports sector it's catered for. And at the legislator level, is we want to see that political buy-in driven at the political level to ensure that this topic is really elevated, this topic is mainstreamed in the bigger scope of all the frameworks, so that we can really break barriers for women and girls to excel in sport, because the bigger picture is inclusivity, the bigger picture is promoting and developing sport as a fair play, it's a fair game, and with all those values that we observe in sport, we also want to ensure that women and girls are catered for, and they should not be prohibited from participating because of fearing for those violence that occurs. That was the brief perception in terms of the perspective from Namibia, how we are fighting the violence against women and girls, and how we are lobbying to ensure that this topic that's very close to our mandate is included in the bigger scheme of things at the government level. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to engaging and to deliberate further on this topic.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Minister. I almost skipped you, and we almost lost on this amazing insight.
Thank you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we invite you to like our African Union Sports Council Region 5 Facebook page and to follow our exciting program, including the not to be missed Morning Doctor program every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Here we discuss everything about sport, and this month we profile outstanding women and athletes from our member countries. At this juncture, I'm looking at time, and I'm going to kindly ask our panelists to confine themselves within the 7 minutes that has been allocated to them, if possible, so that we have ample time for our plenary session and discussions. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, our next panelist will be addressing the topic, are women being prioritized in resource allocation, including funding in sport? How can women break barriers in the area of resource prioritization? Please be reminded to choose the language option of your choice, as we are offering this webinar in our official language of the Region 5, being English and Portuguese. We will now invite Honorable Ana Paulo da Silva do Sacramento Neto, who is a former athlete of the national senior women's handball team that won the first African Championships, Algeria 1989, and also has been on the administration position of Handball Federation as the vice president and also a board member. She's also the founder member of the Angolan Women in Sports Association and also member of the Angolan Olympic Committee. Welcome, Honorable Anna.
Está me a ouvir bem? Consegue ouvir? Ok. Bom dia, senhora Presidente do Conselho de Ministros da Região 5, senhora moderadora. Bom dia aos diferentes painelistas. Reconheço a presença da senhora Mariana Cissé, diretora da Comissão da União Africana. Doutora Stergomena Laurence, secretária executiva da SADC. Permitam-me que considere todo o protocolo observado. Saúdo todos os presentes de forma especial neste mês de março, tendo em conta a comemoração do dia 8 de março, Dia Internacional da Mulher, e é com bastante satisfação que tenho a elevada honra de partilhar experiência neste painel sobre a prioridade das mulheres na alocação de recursos ou financiamento no desporto e como elas devem ultrapassar as barreiras que se apresentam neste processo. A experiência diz-nos que apostar na adolescente e na jovem mulher para a prática do desporto é o maior investimento que as sociedades devem fazer. Por isso, juntar a sociedade para refletir sobre a mulher e o desporto tem sido uma tarefa permanente no âmbito da equidade e igualdade do género. Se, por um lado, o nível de escolaridade tem aumentado em Angola, onde o desporto escolar tem sido notável, tendo em conta que, quer no ensino primário, ensino secundário, bem como no ensino superior, as turmas são mistas, rapazes e raparigas, jovens do sexo masculino, sexo feminino, e as oportunidades são as mesmas. Mas, por outro lado, os clubes têm tendência em priorizar o desporto masculino. Para justificar a sua existência, a jovem mulher, ela para justificar a sua existência e permanência, tem feito esforço muito grande. O esforço das mulheres é a dobrar, como é o caso do handball sênior feminino. Quanto ao futebol, por exemplo, esforços têm sido feitos para que ele seja visto com a máxima atenção, porque é quase inexistente a nível de clubes. De forma geral, o desporto em Angola é maioritariamente financiado pelo governo e por empresas do Estado. Um grande movimento em prol da advocacia para a mobilização de recursos do setor empresarial e bancos, no sentido de apoiarem o desporto feminino, tem sido feito pela Associação Mulher e Desporto, constituída em 2007 por antigas atletas das várias seleções nacionais e clubes no âmbito nacional, e tem como objetivo fomentar a prática, a participação da mulher em todos os aspectos da vida desportiva, bem como a proteção e a promoção da igualdade do género em todas as áreas de competências. Com este movimento, muitas mulheres a nível das comunidades têm estado a praticar o desporto não federado, que nós consideramos desporto de recreação, o desporto tradicional. Muitas mulheres têm se candidatado a cargos de presidentes das federações e umas integram os elencos federativos como vice-presidentes. Temos estado a aumentar o número de mulheres na arbitragem. Tem muitas mulheres no Comitê Olímpico Angolano. A Assembleia Nacional aprovou a Lei do Mecenato, que visa o incentivo fiscal ao financiamento das atividades desportivas e movimentos culturais e desportivos, ainda que de forma tímida, mas tem-se verificado que a sua implementação tem sido exata. Portanto, muitos por via destes pequenos empreendedores e algumas empresas privadas já têm beneficiado destes apoios. Direcionar o foco do trabalho na transformação da mulher em figura central do desporto faz parte da estratégia de ação para o desenvolvimento do país e do desporto em particular. É sabido que há ainda um longo caminho a percorrer neste sentido, mas acreditamos que a aposta no desporto feminino é um investimento seguro. Minhas senhoras, meus senhores, distintas ministras, o que nós temos em foco neste momento é a concentração de recursos do Estado para o desenvolvimento do desporto, a tarefa que tem sido desenvolvida a nível das 18 províncias que compõem o país, em termos de incentivos para que a mulher assuma os cargos de tomada de decisão nas federações e nas associações desportivas, as associações provinciais, porque são essas que tomam a decisão. E neste sentido nós temos tido sucesso, porque o número de mulheres nestas federações tem aumentado e temos feito advocacia para que a mulher não seja deixada para trás e que haja vigilância no sentido da menina fazer a educação física com segurança, a jovem conseguir fazer a educação física e aparecer nas grandes competições, como tem sido o caso dos desportos na região 5 e também a nível dos países de expressão portuguesa. A nível da CPLP, as nossas seleções têm estado a participar, ou as nossas missões desportivas têm tido as equipas femininas que saem maioritariamente das escolas, porque a partir daí elas conseguem competir ao mesmo pé de igualdade com os rapazes. Temos também o apoio do Ministério da Família e Promoção da Mulher, que tem trabalhado na componente Gênero e Desenvolvimento com maior profundidade, e isso tem feito com que o número de mulheres nas escolas se mantenha. Sabem que temos fatores culturais, mas isso tem sido ultrapassado. Muito obrigada pela vossa atenção.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for challenging our mindsets. We will now go to our next panelist, who will be presenting on a topic dear to her heart. She will walk us through the topic outlining the plight of female athletes. What have governments done and what should be done to safeguard athletes, in particular female athletes, against the impact of COVID-19 and help them break barriers? The panelist is Honorable Minister Dr. Kesti Coventry, who is a 5-time Olympian dedicated to sports, Africa, women and children. She dedicated over 20 years to become the top female swimmer in the history of the Olympic Games. She's a member of the International Olympic Committee Executive Board, chairperson of Athletes Commission, a member of FINA's Athlete Committee, and a member of the World Anti-Doping Agency. She was appointed as the chairperson of the Senegal 2022 Youth Olympic Games Coordination Commission. She was appointed as a cabinet minister in Zimbabwe in charge of youth affairs, sport, art and recreation in 2018. Welcome, Dr. Coventry, and please take the podium.
Thank you, Director of Ceremonies, and good morning, colleagues and friends. Allow me to say all protocol observed, because I know we are running a little bit behind time, and I'm going to run through a presentation that we had put together. So as background, we all know that participation for women in sport has had its ups and downs. There's always been ill treatment and inequalities, less recognition going towards female athletes than their male counterparts. And in some societies, women have been completely shut off from the involvement of sport or any physical activities. And this has led to the AU, to the governments around the world, and to organizations such as the International Olympic Committee to really become responsible for stopping this ill treatment and for highlighting the importance of female athletes and women in sport, and to be able to promote equality and equity for both men and women in sport. So under the topic, the flight of female athletes, I believe that most of us know and believe, especially as women, that what we're asking for is to be treated with equal fairness around incentives and around remuneration, around fair media coverage and reporting, being able to get the right equity in terms of opportunities that presents itself when it comes to recognition, and again when it comes to distribution of resources, all things that my other panelists have spoken about. And so what have governments done? Well, governments have lent on legislation, they have reviewed policies, they have been doing capacity development, they have started creating structures within their national associations, amongst their boards and their different program activities. Some governments have designed a quota, specific quota. As the Zimbabwe government, there's a certain number of women who now have to become members of parliament. So the governments have been actively promoting female participation across the board, not just in sport. What is the global evidence that we are seeing that governments have been increasing the positions and the opportunities for women? Well, here are three major events where we have seen the increased female participation at Olympic Games. The first one is the Olympic Winter Games. You can see there that we have the last 4 Olympic Games showing, going from only 4% in 1924 all the way up to 2018, where we're now at 41%. At the Olympic Games, Summer Olympic Games, we start from Paris 1900 with only 2.2% being female participation. And in Tokyo, we will have equal participation of 48.8%. And going on to the YOG, the Youth Olympic Games, which started in 2010 in Singapore with, let me just move my other screen here, 47%, all the way up to pretty much being equal 50-50 in Buenos Aires. So these events, what they're showing us as part of the global evidence, you can go on to the next page, is that the games are showing that there is an increase in sport, in female participation, which is showing that governments have been working together and at national level, regional level, to increase the access to sport for women and young girls. We also see that disciplines of sports, especially when you're looking at the Olympic program, new sports are not entered into the games unless they have female participation. So that is all signs of all of us moving in the right direction. Now, since the establishment of the IOC board, there's never been a female president as yet. But we do know, and we can see by the administration, if we go back one slide, please, you can see in the administration, in the IOC, have been increasing the membership of women on their commissions, as well as on the board itself, as well as at the executive board level, with now 30.8% of the executive board at the IOC being women. And again, this is showing us that, yes, the IOC might be leading in terms of numbers of female participation across the Olympic movement, but it is also proving to us that governments are warming up and including the involvement of women in leadership, which is very exciting. So one of the biggest drivers of this change has been the commitment by governments, by the International Olympic Committee, by international federations, to proactively promote female participation, to proactively promote female leadership by giving programs, by running of programs, and that's a first step. So I do firmly believe that when we are talking about female participation and what that looks like and how to succeed in not just mentoring female leadership and female work, but it's actually having specific quota that is driving the opportunities for females across the board, whether it be in sport, leadership, or any other sector. So the rationale for government and the role, it's paramount that governments are seeking to achieve statistically the parity that we are wanting for, and they need to lead the way. And most governments have been doing this, and we in Zimbabwe are doing this through different legislation. We are, and we have changed our constitution. We are adapting and changing different laws to ensure that there is adequate female equity across all positions and all sectors of the society. And that, I think, is really what we want to see. We want to be able to see that there's adequate opportunity for everybody to equally be able to participate when they have given the opportunity, as well as being given the mentorship, as well as the opportunities to study and learn. Now, athlete assistance in COVID, we have heard from some of our colleagues previously that we all know what is facing athletes across the country and across the globe and across the continent. And we're seeing this have very negative impacts. One of my previous colleagues, my previous panel speakers, was discussing how teenage pregnancies and teenage marriages have increased. And we've just heard a report from our Ministry of Women Affairs last week of the same thing. We're seeing the same kind of reports. And this then means that we need to really step up in terms of the support that is going to young women and young girls across the continent and the globe. Part of what we have been doing as government of Zimbabwe is we have been giving financial support to our ecosystem to bring some kind of relief, which it has been doing. We're also working right now on a way in which to bring back all sports, not just sports that we classified as low risk, but also our higher risk sports. So we're looking at basketball, soccer, etc. And this is where we really need to rely on the protocols that can be put into place to turn those high risk sports into low risk sports, and allowing for not just our athletes to get back onto the fields of play, but all of the athlete support personnel, the entire sport industry, from your groundskeepers all the way up to your coaches and doctors, have all been affected by COVID. So we really need to look at how we holistically bring back and support sport while keeping everyone as safe as possible. What can government still do? Well, there's many different things. Government can still try to reach out to be active in the private sector and sports sector. We can also try to lobby for the sports sector in terms of our vaccination programs. Now, we know that athletes generally are healthy and fit, so I'm not promoting here that athletes should jump the queue ahead of anybody else, but they should be acknowledged within the rollout of our vaccine programs within our countries. So just to look at that. We had the International Olympic Committee session this last week, and the IOC will be providing vaccines to all of the national Olympic committees and Paralympic committees. And for every athlete that is vaccinated, there will be an additional donation to that country. So that is a way in which sport and the Olympic movement will be lobbying for the vaccination of their athletes. We can further develop the facilities when we're preparing for burdens to keep not just the athletes, but all of the personnel that takes preparation in time for events to make sure that they are secure and safe. We need testing of athletes. And we want the upgrade of facilities so that they're internationally recognized as best practices from the different international federations. And then being able to be adapting things like the WHO COVID-19 health protocols to make them adaptable for your own circumstances. That I think is very important. There are some protocols that are simply just not in reach, I think, of some of us and of some national associations when I look at some of the smaller sports associations. So we have to be able to take those protocols and make them as strong and as strict as we can, but allow for there to be flexibility for national associations, especially for those sports that are very low risk, that have very little contact person to person, and allow for those sports to be able to come back to some form of normality without putting a financial burden onto them. But again, above anything else, ensuring that the athletes, coaches, and support personnel remain at our heart and be able to keep them safe during this resumption of sport. In conclusion, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank everybody and all my female colleagues for the work that they are doing to improve our regional community, reflecting and listening on all of the positive changes that are happening within the region. I think we can give ourselves a big pat on the back. And to my colleagues, thank you for your hard work and for driving us forward. Let's continue to support each other as we move forward and find more and more opportunities to place female athletes at the heart of what we're doing to ensure that we get equality for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Coventry. No doubt, thousands of female athletes out there were itching to hear your view on this topic. Distinguished dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, let me take this opportunity again to remind you that we have an interpretation tool which is on a far right down on our screens. Please let us make use of that as we can get interpretations there. Let us not forget the topic of today's webinars, which is coping with COVID-19, breaking barriers for women in sport. You agree with me that we are being challenged by these presentations, and this means we'll have to think about our plenary session and discussions. Our next stop is on a topic, regional strategies to safeguard the rights of women and girls. Are there any targets and milestones? To help us unpack this topic, please welcome our next panelist, who is Dr. Stegomena Lawrence Tax, the 6th Executive Secretary and the first female Executive Secretary of the Southern African Development Community, SADC. Dr. Tax has led and participated in a number of bilateral, regional, as well as multilateral programs and negotiations. Her areas of expertise and experience includes regional integration, socioeconomic, politics, peace and security, trade, finance, investment, and private sector development. Welcome, Dr. Tax.
Sorry, Your Excellency, your microphone is on mute.
I'm terribly sorry. I'm terribly sorry. I was saying I started by recognizing the moderator, the chairperson, and all panelists, and then say that in the interest of time, let me just say all protocol observed. I salute all women. I thank the organizers for convening this very important event and for inviting SADC. I'll go straight to what I'm required to present by starting to explain what are the milestones, or what are the targets, and then I'll go to the milestones. SADC has been committed to promoting gender equality and women empowerment since its establishment, and this is obvious under Article 5.1K of the SADC Treaty, which was adopted in 1992, that recognizes mainstreaming of gender as one of SADC objectives and as an integral part of community building. This was unpacked to start with in the Regional Indicative Strategic Development Plan 2010-2020, which were revised in 2015, and it stipulates 9 targets, which I'll mention. We are past 2020. The revised Regional Indicative Strategic Plan, which is 2020-2030, continues to proper gender initiatives. What are the targets? There are 9 targets I've indicated. The first one is the empowerment of women to eliminate discrimination and to achieve gender equality and equity through the development and the implementation of gender responsive legislation, policies, program, and project. This has been achieved to a great extent in all 16 SADC member states. Target number 2 is at least 50% of what decision-making position at all levels would be held by women again by 2030. I'll give progress. Equal access to opportunities and outcomes in different sectors within SADC Secretariat by 2030. I'll give progress. Target 4, combating trafficking in persons, especially women and children who are specifically vulnerable by 2030. 5, promotion of women's economic empowerment and gender responsive development in order to contribute to social inclusion and justice by 2030. Development and the implementation of effective, holistic, and coordinated approaches for addressing gender-based violence, again by 2020. Full and meaningful participation of women in SADC peace and security structures and processes. The time frame is the same. Widening scope of quality of women and youth participation in industrialization processes by 2030. And the promotion of gender equality in all areas of science and technology innovation by 2030. And to ensure to ensure that these targets are achieved, SADC has developed a number of legislations, policies, strategies, and programs, which I'll mention, also providing the status. The first instrument is the Protocol on Gender and Development of 2008, which was revised in 2016. The protocol aims at empowering women to eliminate discrimination and to achieve gender equality and equity through the development and the implementation of harmonized gender response legislation, policies, program, and the project. This has been achieved, as I had earlier indicated. In every member state, we have legislations and policies which are intended to achieve this. The second framework which we have is SADC framework on achieving gender parity in political and decision-making position of 2008. The framework provides strategies and guidelines for strengthening the implementation of the protocol, which I have already referred to, Protocol on Gender and Development, in order to ensure that at least 50% of all decision-making positions are held by women by 2030. Progress is encouraging. Female representing parliamentary in 6 of our member states ranges between 30% to 50%. I'm not going to mention that the countries in the interest of time. All 2 countries remain around 10%. Now, because of the pool effect, this gives a marginal overall increase of 22 in 2009 to 25 in 2020. At cabinet level, there have been a general stagnation with an average of 21 female occupying cabinet position. What does this mean is that while some member states have made tremendous progress, some of them are lagging behind. Now, if you take an average, that's why you get the 22 and 25%. But this does not mean that there are no countries which have reached the target of 50%, and we commend them for that. Third instrument is the 10-year SADC strategic plan of action on combating trafficking in persons, especially women and children. And this is a blueprint that guides regional response and is premised on the understanding that women and girls are specifically vulnerable to trafficking in persons as a result of the inequalities that are rooted in social systems. So far, 14 member states have put in place legislation on trafficking in person, and they are implementing. It is bearing some fruits, but still we have some work to do in this area. 4, regional multidimensional women's economic empowerment program, which promotes women economic empowerment in gender responsive development in order to contribute to social inclusion and justice. The implementation is going on with mixed results. 5, gender strategy and framework for action to address gender-based violence of 2019-2030. This provides a direction on regional and national level for effective, holistic, and a coordinated approach to address gender-based violence. This has been discussed at length. We have provided progress made so far. So let me skip, but the progress is encouraging, but the challenge remains, and let us keep trying to make sure that we address this challenge. Even this was experienced during the COVID-19, there was an increase in terms of gender-based violence. So it means that efforts are needed to make sure that it is addressed comprehensively, but also in a sustainable manner. 6, regional strategy on women, peace and security 2018-2022. This articulates a regional strategy in the implementation of the United Nations Security Council Resolution 1325 and associated resolutions. The aim of the SADC region of this strategy is to ensure that women fully and meaningfully participate in SADC peace and security structures and processes by mainstreaming gender in SADC peace and security architecture. So far, 4 member states have developed national action plans in this regard. and the other 4 are in the process of developing their national plans as well. And these plans are together with the plans, implementation is going on, and we have noted encouraging progress in terms of involving women in this area. 6-7 industrialization strategy and roadmap, which provides for women, among others, for women empowerment dimension with a view to widening the scope and quality of women and youth participation in industrialization. Notably through improved access to finance, skills development, and programs to support small, medium enterprises, specifically to women and youth in high value adding industries. Progress, this is also is continuously, and the progress is being recorded. It's unfortunate, time is very short, I cannot give specifics. 7, Protocol Science and Technology Innovation 2008, which promotes gender equality and equity in the teaching and learning of basic science and mathematics at all levels of education system in SADC member states. It's very critical that women are also take part in this one and are given a priority. Where are we? Enrollment of women in science, engineering, and technology is gradually improving. And let me commend Namibia has a very high proportion of women enrollment at 77%, with other 5 member states, which I'm not going to name, at about 30% of women enrollment. The other instrument is SADC Workplace Gender Policy. The policy advocates for need for all programs at SADC Secretariat to be gender responsive, including systematic consideration of the differences between the conditions and needs of women and men, and rights to access opportunities. This is being adhered to. All programs mainstream gender, and in filling position, also this is taken into consideration. Since 2013, the Secretariat is headed by a female executive secretary who is talking to you now. And as at February 2021, 45% of directors at the Secretariat are female. And the overall gender parity at the Secretariat is 42. We are short of 50, but we are getting there. Thank you for listening. What I would have to say that SADC targets and initiatives as I have presented them are broad in nature, because we believe that it is only by involving women in decision-making processes and empowering women economically and ensuring that we have a safe environment that women can effectively take part in all sectors, including in sports. Thank you very much. I have tried to be within the 7 minutes allocated, and thank you very much once again for giving us an opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Tax, for this significant presentation. No doubt there will be interesting discussion around the issue of targets and milestones. Distinguished dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, our last presentation for the day will address an issue that has wreaked havoc the world over. The topic she will address is role of women in promoting positive messaging towards vaccination and attainment of herd immunity. To fill us in, please welcome our next panelist, Dr. Josephine Nambose, who is the WHO representative in Botswana since August 2019. Previously, she represented WHO in Eritrea, leading the WHO country team in delivering high quality results. Dr. Nambose's main role are ensuring WHO effective health leadership at the national level and advising and coordinating the provision of WHO's technical assistance to the Ministry of Health and Wellness and other national and international partners on public health issues, strategies, priorities, and program. Welcome, Dr. Nambose.
Thank you very much, Director of Proceedings. And I'd like to recognize Honorable Likeleli Tampane, the Region 5 Council of Ministers Chairperson, and all honorable ministers represented, my fellow panelists and fellow participants, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I'd like to appreciate being invited to this very important meeting and being part of such highly accomplished ladies who have been represented as panelists and also all around the world. And as we commemorate this month as a Women's Day, I felt that before going into the specifics of my topic, I'll just give a brief background, hoping that it wouldn't, everything won't be more than the 7 minutes have been allocated. First and foremost, what we see from the WHO perspective is that among those affected by COVID, the majority are actually males that contribute to 59%. But having said that, women have been affected proportionately in that they, because of their social roles that they have to deliver, they have had to deal with some of the economic challenges to provide healthcare, because primarily that is what, usually that's the role of women in most communities and societies. And as we heard from Honorable Tapani, they have suffered the gender-based violence to such an extent that it's quite unbelievable. And the other important aspect is that some of their own services, like screening for cancer, cervical cancer, screening for breast cancer, most of those have been suspended, therefore leading to a lot of women having the consequences due to the COVID-19. The reasons why most women are not as badly affected as men, what we basically think or see, and according to various studies that have been actually conducted, is both biological and immunological differences, which make women less susceptible to COVID-19. But also there are behavioral differences which exist, like women are more compliant to basic hygiene practices and also women have demonstrated the high knowledge on most of these aspects more than men. The women tend to be more aware of their own health needs, as well as all those of their families. And this goes to the fact what Honorable Kat was talking about. Sometimes we've prioritized in the past a lot of women programs, and sometimes we've neglected the requirements of the young men, which makes some of these imbalances evident in our societies, and we need to address. For the vaccines, for COVID, they come in handy. However, it will be some time before the women can really benefit from this, because they are, first of all, limited in supply, and therefore it will take a little bit of time for us to get the herd immunity that allows us to continue our societal norms. From the beginning, women have always been, as professionals, have made important breakthroughs where vaccines are concerned. As far back as when smallpox was still around. It's a woman who introduced smallpox inoculation to Western medicine. And it is a woman who pioneered research in whooping cough, which resulted in the first pertussis vaccine, and investigated the live attenuated vaccines versus the inactivated microbes being used in vaccines, which were, and then it was also a woman who really developed research that was used in the development of the polio vaccines. And also a woman researched the different routes of transmission of polio. Those were major contributions by women, and it puts us on a very solid platform moving forward so that we can exploit some of those major achievements to what we are now trying to address. Now, looking at what the roles of women is even in sports could be. First and foremost, looking at the natural roles, the gender roles for each and every person in society. Women in sport are really influential. As leaders, they influence decisions and actions to be taken by sports stakeholders, including governments, including their athletes themselves and the spectators. They influence opinions and actions of their colleagues and their followers. They have access to the same tools that we have for communication, like social media and broader public space publishing companies. Because of their accomplishments, they are likely to be listened to, and therefore they take on that role of convincing their followers on some of the key issues related to these vaccines. And we see that as a major role for them in moving forward with the agenda of the COVID-19 vaccines, in addition to the primary roles that women are playing in this issue. Now, on the issue of herd immunity, unfortunately, at the moment, we have two basic challenges. One is on the availability of the vaccines. And the second issue is, even when the vaccines are available, governments are struggling to get adequate resources to procure these vaccines. From the beginning, the primary objective that we are looking at as WHO is to make sure that these vaccines protect, the primary objective is that these vaccines protect from severe disease and death. And therefore, we are basically looking at the older age groups that are likely to die due to this infection compared to the younger people. And as such, WHO is prioritizing health workers to begin with, and those with comorbidities, other illnesses, including, in addition to COVID, and the elderly. Those are the ones we are prioritizing. So the younger and healthier ones, it wouldn't really make sense for us at this material time to prioritize them above those that are urgently in need, especially when we are still dealing with limited availability of these vaccines. They are grouped among various categories, and of course they will be prioritized because of their contribution in society as more and more vaccines become available. I therefore welcome the proposal that was forwarded by Honorable Dr. Coventry, where the sports group can go ahead and start negotiating for that specific cohort for vaccines, because that would be perhaps faster than when this cohort of people are prioritized in the government rollout plans, because there will be either in the middle or at the tail end of that long queue, depending on the availability of vaccines. So I think those are the issues I wanted to share. Basically, that women take a primary role during the prevention of COVID, and they'll most likely take also the primary role in ensuring uptake of vaccines that are now being rolled out. I want to thank you very much, and over to you, Director.
Thank you very much, Dr. Josephine Nambose, for the challenging presentation. We all want to return to normal, and surely we are ready to play our part. At this juncture, let me announce with delight that we are being joined by Mr. Sim Ahmed Selmi, who is the president for AUSC Region 1, all the way from Algeria. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us and supporting this webinar. Distinguished dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, we're looking at our time. We are very sorry to announce that we will not be going into the plenary session and discussion session, where we're anticipating to take questions from participants and panelists answering that. However, we have planned that all the questions must be posted into our platforms such as Facebook, and this means that the panelists, we are going to request you to also log in there and answer all the possible questions that will be posed by our participants. And we kindly request to just extend this time up to 1:20 so as to just finish and close this webinar. Having said that, ladies and gentlemen, time is never enough when we are having fun. You agree with me that this session was packed with insights and new knowledge. It has challenged us, all the women out there, to take the initiative and stand up and be counted. It is true that they say, if you lay yourself on the door like a mat, people will wipe their shoes on you. Let the women rise and be the change they all wish for in order to build the Africa that we want. Let me remind you that after the vote of thanks, we will kindly ask all of you to please switch on your videos for a photo shoot. From me, Muiponi Mashali, your hostess for today, it was an absolute pleasure being your anchor. Thank you again for supporting us. Do not forget to join us same time on Monday, 22nd March for the last of the two-part Game Changer webinar series. Remember that the Region 5 is the leading home of innovation and excellence. At the present moment, allow me to now invite the Vice Chairperson of the African Union Sports Council Region 5, Mr. Raphael Mulenga, to propose a vote of thanks.
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremonies. I'm hoping I'm being heard loud and clear. Allow me, first of all, to recognize the African Union Sports Council Region 5 Council of Ministers Chairperson, also being Minister of Gender, Youth, Sport and Recreation in Lesotho, Honorable Likeleli Tampen, the Region 5 Council of Ministers Vice Chairperson, also being Minister of Youth and Sport in Malawi, Honorable Ulemu Musangama, Minister of Youth and Sports in Angola, Honorable Ana Paula de Sacramento Neto, Minister of Sport, Arts and Recreation, Honorable Dr. Christy Coventry, Deputy Minister of Sport, Youth and National Service, Honorable Emma Kantema Gaomas, African Union Commission Director of Health, Humanitarian Affairs and Social Development, Mrs. Mariam Sise Muhammad, SADC Executive Director, Dr. Stegomena Lawrence Tax, World Health Organization Representative in Botswana, Dr. Josephine Namboze, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to observe all protocols as already pronounced before me. My task this afternoon, distinguished guests, is to propose a vote of thanks for the magnificent level engagement we have had today as part of Region 5 celebration of women in the month of March. Allow me to first thank all panelists, very distinguished and accomplished women leaders in their own right, for allowing us to tap into their rich reservoir of knowledge. You challenged us today. You shifted us out of our comfort zone and dared us to be systematic and pragmatic, not to pay lip service to matters of women and girl empowerment, welfare, and safety. Thank you most heartedly for sparing time in your busy schedules to take for the sake of millions of women and girls in our region. I wish to thank most profusely our Council of Ministers Vice Chairperson, Honorable Ulemu Musangama, for gracing this occasion and welcoming our distinguished dignitaries. Honorable Minister, you demonstrated that you are indeed an ally of gender empowerment and a perfect candidate, definitely for E for She, Gender Ambassador. Thank you for extending such a warm welcome and attaching due importance to our valued dignitaries. Distinguished dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank all guests that accepted our invitation to this first of the two webinar series. I wish to make special mention of the African Union Sports Council from our head office in Yaoundé, Dr. Decius Pandey, and your team. Thank you for the honor of being amongst us today. A special thank you goes to our colleagues, Secretaries General and Chairperson of African Union Sports Council, Regions 1, 2, 3, and 4. Thank you from the bottom of our humble hearts. This kind of collaboration is what makes Africa strive for excellence and define the Africa that we want as espoused in our blueprint Agenda 2063. Allow me to thank our strategic and business partners, among them being the Norwegian Olympic and Paralympic Committee and Confederation of Sport, NIF, the Association for International Sports for All, TAFISA, ANOCA Zone 6, Women Sport International, AWISA, and RADO. Thank you, esteemed colleagues, for accepting our invitation and spending this time with us. Special mention and gratitude goes to TAFISA for supporting and assisting in the creative design of this program. We thank Lisa, Kerry, Jean Franco, for standing with us. Thank you, Tafisa. Let me also thank my colleagues, members of the African Union Sports Council Region 5 Executive Committee, Secretariat, and staff who have been in this webinar. Thank you, my dear colleagues. The sports development journey needs us to hold hands and work together in this way. To the team behind this successive event, Region 5 staff, thank you most heartedly for your passionate dedication and selfless commitment to duty. It is you who make us proud, actually. Thank you for all the hours you put in together to make this a sound reality. Lastly, to our Director of Proceedings, thank you very much for driving the proceedings so well. Indeed, our region is alive and rich in resources. Thank you for your creative and astuteness. As we all know, the two official languages of the region are English and Portuguese. Allow me to extend a very special thank you to Mr. Paco Molefu, who ably provided us with simultaneous interpretation. We will always cherish your support and quality services, Mr. Molefi. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if I did not mention your name, please do not be discouraged. All those who followed us via Zoom platform and Facebook page live, you are all cherished and mostly valued. Thank you for rallying behind us and supporting the Region 5 programs. Please be sure not to miss the last of this two-part web series on Monday, 22nd March 2021. Thank you very much. May God richly bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Molenga. And may I kindly request all to unmute your videos for a photo shoot.
I'm going to come out like this. Oh, your head.